very much for joining us today. It is a pleasure to be here with you. This webinar brought to you by the MENA CSP Knowledge and Innovation Program, which is part of the World Bank Climate Investment Funds and Clean Technology Fund. They are the ones that put together this program. So here today with me, I have 4 people that know a lot about CSP, and that I'm hoping that they're going to be able to give us a lot of insights as to what is happening right now in the industry. If you guys can give it a wave, you know, when I called your name out, Paddy from Aqua Power, he is the CEO of Aqua Power. He's going to give us the developer's perspective. Then we have Jenny Chase from Bloomberg, who is going to give us the other side, the devil's advocate, you know, an understanding of what else is going on there. Then we've got Stratos Tabulareas from the IFC, who is going to be talking to us about concessional finance and what it means for the region. Stratos, if you can say hi. And finally, I think his camera is off, but with us as well is Frank Wouters. He is one of my colleagues in the MENA CSP Knowledge and Innovation Program, and he's going to be giving us the lowdown as to what this Knowledge and Innovation Program can do, how we can help you, how we can help countries in the Middle East and North Africa region, and also a little bit of an insight as to what this Dubai tender means for the region. And for those of you who know me, who will be, I think, a bunch of people around the world joining us now, you know how important and how big of a milestone this is for everybody in the CSP industry. And the reason this is because for years we've been looking at a time in which, you know, CSP was competitive, you know, that price came down to a point where we could, you know, be competitive with gas, you know, and from the dispatchability that we had. We are a little bit closer now at about 5 gigawatts implemented, and I want to kind of take a look more in depth as to what this really means. You know, how can we really activate this into real lasting change across the region and across the industry? So before we start, you know, and, Frank is going to be the first one to talk, but before we start, I'd just like to throw a poll to you people, the people who are listening to us at the moment. And it's going to be very simple. Okay, so first question for you is, are you considering CSP as part of your strategy? If you could please just vote for me, it's very simple, you know, it's either yes or no. Is CSP part of your strategy right now? And that has a follow-up question. And it's about whether, you know, the Dubai tender actually meant a difference to you. So I'd like to understand whether this result in Dubai has made a difference to your understanding of what CSP is and to what extent. So if it's a new thing, or perhaps you've been working in CSP for a long time, perhaps this is new to you, I'm going to give you 10 more seconds. Please get those last votes in. I'd like everybody to have a say. You know, we would like to understand who we have currently connected. So I'm just going to count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I am going to share the results so that everybody can see them. So as you can see, a good 72%, 79% of people decided that yes, you know, they are considering this as part of their strategy. And yes, you know, a good amount of people saying that the Dubai tender has changed their view, or, you know, has helped them make that decision. So thank you very much. You guys know who you have now in the room. And before we start, you know, and I pass the mic on to Frank, I just wanted to mention one thing, and it's the fact that, of course, the Dubai tender is still ongoing, okay? We know this has just started. Only the financial envelopes have been opened, and they've ranged from 9.45 to about 17 cents. So we know this is perhaps could be considered even premature to be talking about this. So the point for us is not even to talk about the Dubai tender itself, but what those results mean for the region. You know, how has the industry taken this milestone? How is it moving forward into the future? Can we lower those costs even further in areas of bigger D&I? That's what we're trying to look at. You know, what could it mean for the countries around the region? So before anybody else, I'd like to, Frank, are you there to join us?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. I'm going to load your presentation, Frank, and feel free to start sharing with us your presentation.
Yes, thank you, and good day, everybody. I think the advantage of having limited bandwidth is that none of you will have to look at my face, so that's, I think, an added benefit. But let me take you first through some of the key objectives that are relevant for countries in the MENA region. First of all, there is an increasing awareness that people would like to rely on national or indigenous energy sources. If you, Belen, can you maybe show that slide? And that's equally valid for the ones that have relied on indigenous fossil fuels as well as the ones that never had any significant amount of oil or gas. People are also increasingly looking towards technologies that can have, a fairly deep amount of local content, and with, an increasing, amount of variable renewables specifically, because those are very cheap right now. The future of the generation capacity needs to be increasingly flexible and dispatchable. Belen, can you show that slide, please? And then lastly, it's important, and of course that's where we're from. We're funded by the World Bank and the group. People would like to see and explore low-cost financing. Belen, can you show the slide, because it's not moving. Belen, can you move the slide?
I'm moving them. I don't know which one do you want me to go to. I'm moving them along.
We're not seeing it. We have only got the cover slide still.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry about that. Just let me do it again. So in my system is showing like it's, that's okay. This is all, okay, let me see. Here we go. Please, can you let me know if this is working right now?
Not yet.
Can you see the slides changing?
No, all I see is that it just has, Belen has started screening sharing, nothing else.
Yeah.
Okay, just give it a few seconds. Keep talking, Frank, and I'll.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So we're good. So what is what does CSP have that can help meet these objectives? Can you go one back, please? First of all, of course, there's great solar resource. Then I think in many countries there's a well-developed industrial base and engineering skills. And then, of course, the dispatchability with the integrated cost-effective storage of CSP, it enables you to have that element. Costs are coming down, as we've seen in Dubai. That's part of why we have this webinar today. And I think it's an important aspect that we should always consider, that there is low-cost financing available from the CTF, the GCF, etc., etc. But we need to have that knowledge on all these aspects flow efficiently between the countries, and part of the raison d'être of our program is exactly that. Now, the MENA CSP Knowledge and Innovation Program is a 3-year program that was launched late last year to bring technical financial support to government, utilities, and industries in the MENA region. And we are organized around 5 activities. So we're looking at the broader MENA region, but it's also fair to say that so far we've had activities in Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Jordan, and there is some interest also from Palestine, Lebanon, and Algeria. Let me take you quickly through the 5 activities. The first one is a small grants program. I don't think I need to guide you through each and every sub point, because you're able to read that yourself at your leisure. No, please go back to the first one. The small grants program is currently being detailed out, and some of the elements that we are thinking about is for example, in-depth technical assistance, but also small-scale innovations, and maybe looking into the manufacturing of certain components. I mean, these things would depend on the local situation and the country. Activity 2 is where most of the action has been so far. That's a component in-depth technical assistance and just-in-time assistance. So far we've done several studies, or we're in the process of carrying out several studies that help the decision making on CSP going forward. For example, in Jordan and Egypt, we've also had interaction with Libya on that, and basically come to increased knowledge of how CSP can help the country's energy mix going forward. Activity number 3, knowledge exchange and cooperation. We had a quite successful workshop on market system value and financing in March at the beautiful Mazen Center at the Noor Solar Complex in Morocco, where we had representation from almost all the countries. That was very successful. We also had a large delegation from China who was ramping up an ambitious CSP program that was very interesting. Activity number 4, capacity building and training. That is something we are at the moment exploring. There is some requests, and we're looking out to best meet the training and capacity building needs. And then lastly, but certainly not least, there is an activity 5, which is knowledge dissemination and the web-based platform. And one of the activities is, for example, the organization of webinars such as this one today. And with that, I think I've taken everybody through a very quick overview over the KIP, the Knowledge Innovation Program. And now I think it's better to go into a deep dive of the Dubai project.
Okay, so before I think we go any further, just I would like to kind of make the frame a little bit for what we're talking about here, right? In terms of the Dubai tender, there is not a lot of information that is publicly available at the moment, which is understandable because this is an ongoing tender. However, what we do know is that it's a 25-year tender. We know that the energy needs to be dispatched from 4 o'clock to 10 a.m. So that means it cannot be dispatched from 10 a.m. to 4 o'clock. So it's essentially a thermal battery, if you like. We know it's 2 towers of 100 megawatts each, obviously with thermal storage. And we know it needs to dispatch 365 days a year. So, this is not really, it doesn't give you the full spectrum of what the plant is like, but it does certainly give you an understanding of what kind of technology we're talking about here. And of course, as we said, the prices that have been offered in the financial envelopes were from 9.45 all the way to about 17. So the question that we are asking here today is really, what does this mean for the rest of the region? Can we just literally change the DNI numbers? Obviously the DNI in the United Arab Emirates is not as high as other areas around the region. So can we use this and extrapolate it into a different region and get better rates perhaps? Can we manage it today? So in those terms, and knowing that you cannot obviously talk about the Dubai tender at all, Paddy, from your perspective, what does this milestone mean going forward? We had it already, with PV before, the prices came down in Dubai and then it started coming down through the region and they stayed down. Can we make this happen? And just for everybody, there is a Q&A box at the bottom. I know there's going to be a million questions for Paddy. I'm going to be reading them. So please send them, and I'll, at the end, after all of our speakers are done, we'll try to get to as many as possible. Okay? Paddy, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be with you this morning, this afternoon, or whatever, this evening, wherever you are. We're very proud and privileged to be involved with CSP in general. We started getting involved with CSP in 2010 as we prepared the tender for the Noor 1 project, and then have subsequently followed on with several other projects. So, I think the first important point to recognize is that, look, this is not a rocket science technology. In fact, funnily enough, compared to photovoltaic, capturing electrons and somehow then putting them through into wires, that's a little bit more, it's, much more, at least I think, much more rocket science than just the old-fashioned capture the heat of the sun, boil the kettle, produce the steam, and run a steam turbine. Okay, so it's very, very basic technology, actually. But of course, the huge value-adding innovative part of it is the discovery that you can put that steam inside salt and take it out and put it back in and take it out very efficiently. So it does give, so the huge advantage of CSP that people just don't recognize, even is, in my view anyway, they undervalue it, is it is actually not even a base load technology. It's a load following technology. So it's very flexible, dispatchable electricity. So in equivalent terms, it can perform exactly like a gas-fired combined cycle power plant. We can ramp it up, we can ramp it down, except of course here in the case of it's a solar technology. So even when the sun is not shining, we are able to do it because we are able to demonstrate that we can store this heat for very, very long times. In South Africa, we have a plant that has continued to dispatch for many a days, even though we only have 9 hours of storage that's technically designed in that plant, simply because of the long sunlight hours in Uppington, in that area where the plant is. We have been, and the dispatcher wanted it, we carried on dispatching. So anyway, so coming back to the Dubai project, of course we are, we are very privileged to be involved, but we're very excited simply because we are able, the Dubai tender has shown how, where the cost can be brought down to. Thank you, Belen, you're absolutely right. It is a tender that is still in evaluation. There is a lot of confidentiality agreements that's around it. So, neither we nor others will be able to discuss too much of it right now, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't take away the reality. We can talk about the fact that CSP has come down to a kind of 10-cent level. So we have delivered a tariff of 9.45. There are others who have delivered tariffs of 10.58 and 11.42. Okay, somebody did deliver a tariff of 17.35, but I think we can put that aside. But okay, so somewhere in here is where we are at. So CSP, which only 6 or 7 years ago was sitting at about 40 cents per kilowatt hour, without a lot of deployment till today, has come down to this level. So that's the really important point I would like to convey. And we've been able to bring it down for a variety of reasons, and I think we can discuss those, because we have seen that. So it was sitting at about 40 cents. NOR 1, with concessionary financing, brought it down to I've forgotten the number now, 18.95, I think, cents per kilowatt hour. Now, subsequently, we have the models. The plant is dispatching, performing very, very well, no issue. But because we have the financial models and the business case, we were able to take the concessionary financing element out of it and simulate and see what would happen if we were able to run it as a commercial project. Well, then itself, it was a 24 cents tariff. So it would have been a commercial project at 24 cents. And at that stage, only about 3,000 megawatts, 3,500 megawatts of solar of CSP had been deployed in the world. Photovoltaic has come down to 5 cents and below after 400,000 gigawatts had been deployed. So the comparison here is we've got 5 gigawatts deployed and the tariff is now down to about a 10-cent level. When you break it down though as a technology, think about it. It's not that sophisticated. There isn't an awful lot of, there's a lot of materials there, but there is a lot of components that are very standard. Steam turbine, a very tried and tested block. There are, I don't know how many million gigawatts that are deployed around the world. So this is very easy. It's almost a standardized off-the-shelf product, very optimized. Then you've got the solar field. Yes, you've got sophisticated precision engineered products there, but as we continue to develop more and more people come into the supply chain, we're able to continue to reduce cost. And as more plants come online, we can also start to get less concerned about the unknowns or the risks. So we're able to even eliminate some of the risk contingencies and keep pricing it down. So a lot of the costs that have come, so the 10-cent level to where we have got to fairly quickly is, as a result, a lot of these changes, or optimization, improvement, more people coming to the supply chain, more deployment starting to give us more confidence, us being able to eliminate contingencies, unknowns, and risk factors. However, we do need to recognize that we are in a fairly low interest rate sort of environment, which of course the PV is also benefiting from, by the way. But this is a significantly more capex heavy proposition, CSP, with storage as opposed to photovoltaic. So the low interest rate environment has a bigger benefit to this technology than it has to, say, CSP or wind. But okay, so that is a point that we need to recognize. The good thing I can tell you without the pieces that I cannot tell you about Dubai is that Dubai tender is a very commercial value proposition. So there is no subsidy per se embedded in that tender. It's a very straightforward tender. But it is a tender that encourages the private sector to perform at its best. This is pretty much what Dubai does, because we have been privileged to participate in a few tenders now with Dubai. We have lost one, we have won a few, so we can speak about it. They tend to be very professional. They tend to take out all the bells and whistles. They specify precisely what it is that they want, and they leave the private sector to deliver it. So they put in place penalties, mechanisms, whatever, for non-performance, but they don't interfere too much. So they don't try to tell you that the plant shall be blue, or they don't try to tell you that your financing has to be like this. They give you a lot of freedom for you to innovate and for you to optimize. So it does bring the best of the private sector in being able to deliver, and that is reflected, in my view, finally in the tariff. But it is also true that compared to other locations in this part of the world, the DNI is not the best. So in Dubai, the DNI level is kind of like a 2,000 level, whereas we know, okay, the other extreme, if we go to Chile in Atacama Desert, it's somewhere like 3,100. So just at face value, for the same, if we go and plonk the same power plant under the same set of terms and conditions in the Atacama Desert, there will be a 40+% discount on whatever the final Dubai tariff is going to be. And then of course, whether it is in Jordan or whether it is in Morocco or whether it's in Egypt or whether it is in somewhere else, Saudi Arabia, the differences are purely there is a difference around DNI. But there is also then differences around credit environment. There's a difference around taxation. There is a difference around sort of specific terms and conditions of the bid. In some instances, for example, some procurers require you to put some cost in your bid to reimburse them with for expenses they have incurred in developing the project. Now, depending on what that number is, obviously. So in comparing numbers, one needs to be very, very careful. And this also goes across all fuels. So when you take a tender and compare CSP and PV, not only do you need to worry about the different value proposition between dispatchable electricity and PV when only the sun is shining, but also you've got to be very concerned about all the variable terms and conditions. But coming down to the Dubai project, though, what I can tell you is that it's pretty much as clean as you're going to get. Land is provided at a sort of nominal cost, so it's not a significant cost. But other than that, there is no sort of subsidy or benefits of any kind, like you will get in the United States, a tax credit, or somewhere else you get some other, differential tariff. So here is a case where we are required to deliver flexible electricity through the night, CSP therefore performing at its best. I think I've probably spoken for quite a length, so maybe I'll pause and answer questions and allow other people to carry on with their piece.
Thank you very much, Paddy. Lots of questions, but you've also, I think, given a lot of answers. You know, I think the fact that it's a purely commercial tender speaks well. It sort of says, you know, there's a realistic price. You know, there isn't a lot inbuilt in that. And yes, appreciated. I think you've given a little bit of, yes, there is ways in which can be made better, you know, by having more DNI, but there's also ways in which, you know, it can go up by like having more complications in the financial structure, etc. So there are ways in which, you know, the tenders can be pull up the price and down for sure, but this is a purely commercial tender that is pretty real, so to speak, yeah, for the price. So this is understood. Okay, Jenny, we're gonna let you talk now. Jenny is gonna give us the other perspective. So I'm just gonna load your presentation, okay? You're gonna give us more the perspective of what's going on in the Middle East in terms of PV and other options that are becoming. So let me just put up.
Thank you, Belen. And hello, everyone. I have a slightly different perspective from Paddy because I've been covering the solar industry as an analyst for 11 years now. Now, in 2008, we wrote a very enthusiastic piece on how cheap solar thermal was and how, in utility scale, solar thermal was the cheap way to deliver bulk power. And in the years since, we've learned that that was almost completely wrong. Photovoltaics is down well below $60 per megawatt hour. And yes, photovoltaics does not generate at night. That is the big issue, and it is a huge issue, and it's going to be more important in the years to come. But there is now about 325 gigawatts of photovoltaics installed versus the 5 gigawatts of solar thermal. And I mean, I slightly disagree with what Paddy says. Solar thermal is not rocket science, and I'm sure he's right, but there's a lot of complications in solar thermal that you just don't get with photovoltaics. You're dealing with fluids, which freeze, they escape, they give their own complications. And whilst, as Paddy says, steam turbines are very standard, that also means that there isn't a lot of cost reduction in steam turbines in the next couple of years versus what we're seeing at the moment with batteries and photovoltaics. So our house view, as it says on this slide, is that photovoltaics will be about 17% of the world's electricity supply by 2040, driven mainly by cost reductions in batteries and photovoltaics. And solar thermal will probably not much grow beyond the existing pipeline, which is about 3 or 4 gigawatts, as it is simply too expensive, and there are other ways to meet that demand for dispatchability. And I have a lot to learn on this call. I mean, I only just learned that this solar thermal is specifically for afternoon and nighttime power, which is interesting. But I'm also a bit cautious about this headline rate of below $100 per megawatt hour, because I'm thinking of the Abu Dhabi tender, where the headline number for photovoltaics is often quoted as $24 per megawatt hour. It's not $24 per megawatt hour. It's actually more like $30 per megawatt hour once you include the fact that there's peak, that you get paid 1.6 times as much for generation between June and September, which is peak demand time. And so before we start getting excited about headline numbers, I mean, Paddy told us some things like the land cost is low, but I shall be listening for some other details. And Belen, if you don't mind moving to the next slide, there are some low headline numbers for other places as well. So particularly in Hawaii, there's $111 per megawatt hour number. Now that's got an investment tax credit, so that's probably should be at least kind of 50% higher, but that's for delivery in 2018. And then there's another American one in 2019 the headline number is below $45 per megawatt hour. So all I'm saying here is that headline numbers can be misleading, and it gets very complicated when you start looking at proportion of storage versus proportion of generation. And so I'm not getting overexcited quite yet about this headline number in Dubai. If we could move to the next slide, Belen. We're also expecting the price of lithium-ion batteries to come down to less than a third of what it is today by 2030. And that's not necessarily driven by energy. It's actually mostly driven by electric vehicles, which we suspect people are going to buy anyway, regardless of whether they're actually needed in the grid. And of course, if we move down again, the photovoltaic sorry, better, next slide. And the photovoltaic module experience curve continues just crunching away. You can now buy photovoltaic modules for 35 cents per watt, and that's so cheap. That's so cheap. You can almost think about rolling them out everywhere and no problem. And as an analyst, I love numbers. I love numbers so much. So I have one last slide, which was just me doing some back of the envelope calculations last night on what it would cost to deliver something similar in the year 2021, using our learning curves for photovoltaics and lithium-ion batteries. And we think it would probably cost in the region of $420 million to, I put a massive battery on a 1,600 megawatt hours of lithium-ion battery, which will be cheaper by then than it is today. I made some assumptions, 8% cost of equity, 4% cost of debt. I didn't assume any tax because I'm not sure this Dubai project will be paying tax either. And I was coming up with a levelized cost of energy around sort of $115 per megawatt hour, which is in the same ballpark as the Dubai solar thermal tender. And also it would probably be able to offer flexibility service, very short-term flexibility services to the grid. So you're not necessarily looking at something in a completely different ballpark from solar and batteries. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you very much, Jenny. It's always good to hear from you from the other perspective, because we need to be aware, right? I mean, we're seeing things and we're seeing change, but of course, there's always the other technology that is doing very well too. I have to say though, you and Paddy aren't that different in the way that you think. Most of the things you were saying, I could absolutely hear Paddy also thinking and saying. He's a lover of PV as well. I know he's pretty technologically agnostic. But, you know, perhaps, Paddy, after you can have a go at, you know, discussing some of the points that Jenny's made. Before that, though, I'd like to allow Stratos to, would you like to say something quickly now, Paddy?
Look, I do want to pick it up, but maybe just a couple of things. Okay, so yeah, Jenny, I think we're all usually once bitten, twice shy. So I didn't realize that you guys had projected 17% of the world by 2040 or something. But never mind. Okay, but your last slide is the point. The last slide that you put forward, it's an interesting evaluation, shows that. Yeah, so there is the prospect. In the case of PV plus battery, it's a prospect, whereas in the case of CSP, it is reality because there is a commercial tender that has been submitted with penalty clauses, liquidated damages, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so that is somewhat comparable. So the CSP has delivered a number there that is there on the table below 10. As I say, with all the sort of commercial penalty structure in it, you are projecting a theoretical case of a prospect of what it can get there, and I'm not going to argue with that. I think it was a very logical analysis. So there is the promise that battery also can get there together with PV at some future time, and I think that is absolutely where the world is going, and that is where the world needs to go. I think we do need to have optionality. I don't think the entire world energy system is going to be run by one technology in the future. So I think it's extremely important that we continue to pursue as many different options as possible without eliminating the carbon content. So from that point of view, it's exciting to see that CSP has got there, because I also have always been saying, if CSP with molten salt storage didn't get to a level to a low enough level before battery and PV, with the low level of penetration, CSP would have died. But now it has got there ahead of it. I think it will continue to propagate faster, and battery and PV will catch up. Whether it catches up next week or next year or in 2 years' time, okay, fine. It will catch up whenever it does. And we will all be playing a part in trying to catch up also with PV plus battery. So I think we are all pretty much saying the same thing at the end of the day.
One comment.
I have a lot more Stratos, we'll get to you, promise. Just give them 1 second. This is very interesting.
I mean, this project hasn't been delivered yet. we can't count this project as delivered because it hasn't been built. It hasn't even been awarded a tender yet. I know that it's very easy to get excited about these numbers, and we do get excited about headline tender numbers all the time, in PV as well. But sometimes these projects are not built, and sometimes they are not built as a profit, and sometimes they are built and they're a disaster. So maybe I'll keep with I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. The only thing I can tell you on the CSP side of it, by the way, is that, okay, so we have got fairly large plant, was at 165 megawatts with, okay, fine, 3 hours of storage. That's performing impeccably. Okay, I mustn't speak too soon. Maybe just because I've said that just now, in the next 10 minutes, it's going to fail. But no, it's been running now for just short of a year, and it's performing extremely well. We have a similar plant in South Africa, Buckport, performing fantastically. Both of them are performing above pro forma design. So we have that experience. The only other thing I will come back, you've said, okay, this plant has not been built. Okay, the hypothetical case of PV plus battery, there has been no tender that has come anywhere near delivering this kind of numbers. So, okay, fine. But we've got to continue to keep remaining optimistic and keep pushing the technology boundaries.
May the best technology win, I guess. Although this is not really a competition in that way.
No, not at all. They are serving two different spectrums.
Exactly. Okay, Stratus. So we now have an opportunity to hear from you and all of the concessional finance, which also is going to help push prices down in the region. So yeah, go for it.
I cannot keep myself from jumping into the interesting debate here. So if you allow me, I will make a few comments. After being more than 35 years in the industry, a couple of key lessons that I have learned is, number one, in the energy industry, there's not one silver bullet. As Patty pointed out, there's not one technology that would dominate the energy market. It's usually a combination of things. The second, which is, and this is well known to most people, the second one, which is less known, and it's more to the people that are developing technologies, and I had the pleasure to be around a number of technologies that were developed, is don't bury a technology before you are absolutely certain. There are a number of technologies that look that they're not going to go anywhere, and we were surprised. This is a very dynamic situation, and we need to leave our options on the table, and very often we're pleasantly surprised. One thing that makes me feel very optimistic is that the debate has shifted from talking only about levelized cost of electricity to comparing value. And I was very happy to see Jenny compare the CSP with storage with PV plus batteries, because there have been a lot of people that are talking about levelized cost of electricity, which is apples and oranges. In fact, if you look at the value side of the equation, you will find out that there are a lot of things that both batteries and the CSP with storage do for the grid. And very often the challenge is to derive revenue for the services that these assets provide. For example, reserve. One thing that is not discussed at all is inertia in the system. These steam turbines, being old-fashioned established technology, they do a service to the grid to provide primary frequency control. If you switch completely to PVs or other technologies, you may have a problem. So CSP will have a role, in my opinion, in the coming years. It's not going to dominate the power system, but there will be enough in the locations that it's appropriate to go. And of course, everybody has his crystal ball, and it differs from person to person. So switching to the key topic that you have asked me to comment, which is the concessional financing. Let me just say two introductory comments. The first one is the World Bank group, both IFC and World Bank, are very interested to see this technology have a chance. And we'll do everything to support it to the extent that it makes sense. The second thing is our objective as IFC is to see this technology be launched on fully commercial terms. So concessional financing to us is not something that we want to see, forever. But when you deal with new technologies, there are a lot of barriers that they're facing. So very often financing, preferential financing, it's something that it's important to be there. The Clean Technology Fund, the CTF, has been the main mechanism through which we have supported CSP and other technologies. And for example, we had the pleasure to work with Patty's company on NUR1, where we provided stable debt financing on the first project. We have been involved in 4 projects in South Africa, 3 projects with Abengoa, and 1 project with Aqua and Solar Reserve, which is about to get PPA signed. So we have shown commitment and interest in participating in this technology, and we continue to be interested to finance it. And again, as I said, in markets where it makes sense. Frank mentioned the World Bank initiative in MENA. MENA is the region where it makes more sense from a number of points of view. And we hope that after Dubai, we see some CSPs in developing countries, maybe Jordan, maybe Egypt, and so on and so forth. A lot of people are asking what is happening with CTF and any follow-up funds. To my knowledge, and I have not confirmed this, but CTF will stop accepting new applications at the end of this month. But CTF is being replaced by the Global Climate Fund, GCF. GCF is still in its early stages. A number of financial institutions like EBRD, Inter-American Development Bank have, to my knowledge, signed the legal agreements. IFC is in the last stages of signing these agreements, and we hope that soon we will have financing that it's available to flow to projects. One important thing on CSP technology. CSP technology is a very good fit for GCF. It's a very good fit because of project size. Usually with small projects, it's difficult, transaction costs are high, and for projects that are less than $50 million for GCF, it's marginal or it doesn't make any sense. So large CSP projects are quite suitable for GCF funding. Countries will have to show strong interest and request this kind of funds, but usually these projects come as part of a detailed evaluation and is part of the strategy of countries. For example, the World Bank Group this is not a secret. We're talking to Jordan, which is a country that has a substantial percentage of renewables, PV and wind. And system stability is becoming an issue in the coming years. So storage is a key option that needs to be implemented, either through CSP with storage or batteries or both, right? So I will stop with this, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stratos. We actually have had quite a few questions, some of which I'd like to ask you guys directly, but before that, I'm going to send, I'd like to actually send another poll to the people listening. So it's a very simple one. It's just, in your opinion, what do you believe is an achievable CSP objective for the MENA region by 2022? So like 2020, 2022, so that like sort of 3 to 5 years time. Do you think it will be more than 10 cents? Is that realistic and achievable? Is it from 8 to 10 cents? is it from 6 to 8 cents, or is it lower than 6 cents? So we're just trying to gauge, how do you think that this is going to be sort of going in the next 3 to 5 years? Are we going to see a sharp decrease like we've seen in other technologies, or is it going to be a little bit more steady? Jenny made a good point, in terms of the pipeline compared to what the pipeline with PV could be. You do have to bear in mind there is a 1.4 gigawatt pipeline in China. China is taking this technology very seriously at the moment. And then there is also a very 1 gigawatt pipeline in Saudi Arabia. There is another 800 megawatt pipeline in the United Arab Emirates, and there is an extra plant also in Morocco that has been announced, built, that is going to be actually happening pretty soon. So just in the next 5 seconds, please, can you just get your last votes in? Do you think it's going to be more than 10, 8 to 10? Is it going to be 6 to 8? Or do you believe it's going to be less than 6? And I end the polling, and I'm going to share the results. And I guess that the first thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to ask our speakers at the moment. Obviously, what wins here is from 8 to 10 cents. Pretty big. Following up would be the 6 to 8 cents. So I would like to ask each of you to, obviously the region is very large, and the DNIs vary a lot, but if you give me an idea of what you think it'll be like in 20 to 22, Frank, what do you think? First and foremost, where would you hedge your bets if you had to choose?
I'd say between 6 and 8.
Between 6 and 8, okay. Paddy?
Yeah, I agree with Frank. I think everything will truncate to 6 and 8. I mean, CSP for sure. I see a very clear path to 6 and 8. More towards 6, actually.
That's great news, actually. Jenny?
More than 10.
More than 10. Okay, Stratus?
I'll still be around to claim victory, by the way.
I would love to see that.
I would say between 6 and 10. And the reason I'm saying I'm getting 2 regions is these things are very site specific and depend on solar resource, okay? And a number of other things. So depending on the solar resource, I think we're gonna see 6, but we may see 8 to 9 and 10, which would be perfectly competitive. Nothing wrong with that. Remember, oil is still 15 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour, and many countries are burning oil.
Sorry, you bring a very valid point, and I think that's something that we mustn't forget, and it needs to be repeated. That is, look, I think it's pointless talking about numbers in abstract. So it's about comparison, alternative opportunity to serve that load spectrum in that country. So if you take Jordan, and if you can deliver PV in Jordan at a price, you can deliver CSP in Jordan at a price, you can deliver PV, oil-fired power at a, for Jordan. On that basis is how you need to be comparing, not on the basis, PV is 2.9 in Dubai, and therefore in Jordan it should be 2.9. No. In Dubai, comparatively, gas would be a different price. So it's about within your country and your system, what are the alternative prices? Because that represents the credit environment of your country, the load profile of your country, the various parameters in your country. So absolutely right. So it will be a range finally across the world.
Absolutely.
So I have a question here that is supposed is for you, Paddy. That is, if you were to kind of get rid of that limitation of not being able to produce energy from 10 to 4, potentially, how much less could be achieved? I don't know to what extent you can answer that, but it's just in terms of
I can answer that. It's very simple. I mean, so to the extent the RFP say defines a particular load profile or dispatch profile, obviously we will tender to that. We will optimize our plan to that. Now, so if I then want, if it is to provide, say, 24 hours, we would have to make a little bit more capex investment in the solar field, and we'll have to size. Well, in fact, no, the turbine will be the same size, right? But the storage may, no, even the storage. So when I think about it, we can efficiently deliver it. So that probably will reduce the tariff. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking it could reduce the tariff by easily another 10% odd. So it will reduce the tariff, not increase the tariff. If you were supplying throughout the day and night, yeah. It'll reduce the tariff by quite a bit more probably, yeah. We haven't done that exercise, but yes. So
I think I didn't catch some of that stuff, but essentially is that you could maximize that or optimize to an extra 10% increase with a few tweaks.
At least, if not more. Off the top of my head, but I think it'll be more. We haven't done that exercise.
What about if you were to have a similar tender, like as it is set up in other countries with like better DNI, say for example Jordan, you know, we're just picking one of the countries that has the best DNI, perhaps for a comparison.
No, I mean, as I said to you, I mean, I kind of threw out Atacama Desert as the extreme, but yeah, so in the case of Jordan, I mean, you know, straight away you can take this number and if you're just going to compare on the basis of DNI, you can reduce this number by 30%, plus or minus, that kind of a sort of level. However, please, before you jump to that conclusion, you need to then add for credit environment, taxation, or any other extraneous factors. Cost of construction may be marginally more expensive in Jordan. I don't know. But yeah, but look, I think generally, I think it's probably fair to say that in a, because you're going to be 30% lower because of the DNI, maybe the other factors won't counter so much. So you probably end up with a lower tariff in Jordan, probably. Again, it's something that we haven't done. But I think, look, the minute you start, you know, if you're giving dispatchable electricity at 10 cents for Jordan, they should take it with both arms and run, because their average cost of generation is in the 20s. And even their shale, their domestic resource is sitting at about 12 or 13 or something like that.
So 1375, Patty.
Well, there you go. So, I mean, you know, definitely you should be thinking very seriously about those kind of options. Now, the other important point to realize here in this one is that, look, once you contract, there is no, other than indexation for inflation for operating cost, which is a very tiny component. And by the way, all these numbers we are talking about levelized. But other than for the O&M indexation, there is no cost increase. It's finished, it's fixed. Whereas in the case of fossil fuel based plant, not obviously in the case of shale, which is your own domestic resource, so you've factored that in. But if you're importing fuels, you've got two issues that you need to contemplate. Number one, foreign currency, impact on your economy, because you're importing fuel. And number two, it's entirely subject to market price. So today we are sitting in a low oil price environment, a gas price environment. Who knows what that will be in the future? Maybe it'll go lower. Okay, you might be lucky. But over a 20-25 year horizon, so those are the kind of things. But don't underestimate in any economy the foreign currency impact, the ongoing foreign currency impact of importing fuel. So there is a hell of a compelling argument why. This is more than anything else for me. It's not a comparison between PV that's exciting for me. What is exciting for me is the fact that for the first time, we're able to deliver dispatchable, reliable, load-following energy solution using renewable energy, which can fix the cost, reduce long-term foreign currency borrowings as an alternative to fossil fuel-based energy.
Thank you very much. Paddy, you've definitely put that into perspective. It's really not about the PV anymore, or not about this time anyhow. And there is a question here. I have two questions. One for you, Paddy. This is very specific. And then Jenny, there is like three. I'm going to make a mix here for you. It says that you talked about waiving contingencies on some risks. Can you tell us more about those specific risks? So I guess in terms of like setting up that tender so that, you know, it can be maximized.
Okay, no, okay, so as for example, if I am a developer and I'm stepping into CSP for the first time, I don't have operating experience. Okay, I'm going to hire some staff, I'm going to listen to them, but at the end of the day, I am concerned and I am going to put a margin. I'm going to put a margin on generation, because these tenders, by the way, you know, people think that these are just, they come with stiff penalties for non-performance. and we have to live with them for 20, 25 years. So we need to be careful. I mean, people think, because they see these sort of shockingly low numbers, and they think it's a marketing exercise. No. These are commercial realities, and we need to think about 20, 25-year performance. Okay, so as we continue to operate more plants, we become more confident. So we are able to reduce the risk contingency factor just on some of those components. Just like the same way, construction contractors, as they start to do more projects, as they start to build more towers, they become more confident. They have seen some of the, there are a lot of issues around Tonopah, for example, in the United States. I'm very sorry for the contractor who has suffered the consequences, but it has been fantastic for the industry because we've been able to learn from that. All the things that we shouldn't do, what can go wrong, how to fix when they go wrong. So all of that gives confidence, and that reduces risk margin. So in the real world, contractors, EPC contractors, operation and maintenance contractors, and I'm a contractor too. I'm delivering energy services as a contractor. Contractors evaluate risk, and against risk, then they price a margin. Now, as we do more and more and more. So in the case of PV, those margins are tiny now because we've all got tons and tons and tons of experience. Whereas in the case of CSP, with only a few thousand deployment, those margins are still there at a level. So as we deploy more, we'll continue to bring them down, and they are now starting to come down. So it is starting to get tight. That's why I'm saying I see an opportunity for us to get to 6 in the not too distant future. It's a tariff number to target, because we can also continue, there are components that we can continue to optimize on. More people will jump into the supply chain and create competitive tension at component level. EPC contractors will get more confident and comfortable and start to reduce some of those contingencies. We can continue to optimize on performance.
There is China.
And China, more suppliers coming in from China. Yes, absolutely right.
I think that is a game changer. The same as for PV, right? It was expensive, it remained in Europe, and then it became cheaper. So we'll see a change there for sure.
There was a question that said, so what does it take to continue to reduce costs? What it takes is a bigger market, because the bigger the market, more people come into the supply chain, more people jump into innovating, more people jump into inventing new things, optimizing. So and it's exactly what that's the way television came down in price. That's the way cars have come down. That's the way electric cars are going down in price. Batteries are going down in price. Same. So no different for CSP. So we shouldn't be shocked. I mean, what I'm impressed with, I say so myself, only with 5,000 megawatts of deployment, only, we have got to this.
Oh, I get your point, but here's the thing. Okay, so the last question, because we're just over time. So just the last question for Jenny, last question for everybody, so that you can weigh in, and we're done. And Jenny, the question is about your battery projections, which a lot of people have commented on. So they found them fascinating because they were, really, really good and aggressive, and perhaps people weren't thinking that it would go down that fast. But the question is, are you just talking about the equipment itself, or are you talking about the whole thing with the installment, with the prices that you worked out in your last slide? And is it, or have you got a clear picture of whether it's definitely going to be lithium-ion, or is there some other technology there on the works that might sort of come through the ranks?
Okay, so that's for the fully installed utility scale battery pack. And in fact, we do see tenders being bid for lithium-ion battery packs at surprisingly low prices, like prices much lower than this. And what was the other question? Whether we have, sorry, what was the second question?
So whether you consider not only the equipment, but the EPC cost, setting it up, the whole project, the project as a whole.
Oh, yes. No, we just use lithium-ion battery prices because we've got an experience curve for lithium-ion battery prices. Of course, if there is a breakthrough in, say, vanadium redox technology, then batteries will be much cheaper than that. But the reason we based it on lithium-ion battery prices is that there's not an if, about whether another enormous tranche of lithium-ion batteries will be deployed. Electric vehicles are on the road now, and more of them every year. Whereas, unfortunately, for solar thermal, there is very much an if about whether another 5 gigawatts will ever get built.
Okay, and finally, so we get the point here. I just have a last question for you guys, and it's on the value of dispatchability, because it seems to me, like from listening to you and from the questions we've seen, that the question really is, what is the value of dispatchability? And we know that, you know, it's easy not to care about dispatchability until you have a lot of peak load in a market. So you can put, you know, as much wind, as much PV as you like, and very, very cheap, but there's a point in which you cannot take it. So are we seeing the value of dispatchability change? Is it increasing? Do we have a price for it? You know, how do you see this developing over the next 3 to 5 years? So, you know, let's start maybe with Stratos, that, you know, you haven't spoken for a while, and then we'll take it to Jenny and then Paddy, and then we close off for today.
Thanks, Bella. And this is a key question, and it's not just peak demand. It's as when you deploy a lot of wind and solar PV. These are intermittent. A cloud goes over the sky and the PV is not producing, so it doesn't matter if it's peak or non-peak, you have a significant reduction in your supply. So the implication of deploying a lot of wind and solar is that the rest of your system needs to be very flexible. And it's a regulatory problem, it's a market design problem, but we need to find a way to capture the value of flexible generation and give back the revenue to where it's deserved. I think a lot of people are working on this. This is not an easy problem. In many of the countries, especially that we work, there are no power markets, functioning power markets. But even in the sophisticated power markets of Europe and North America and so on, this is a challenge, but we're going in the right direction.
Okay, Jenny, do you want to go next?
I completely agree with everyone here who said that dispatchability is an enormous thing. And it may well be that the optimal design for solar thermal long term is 4 or 6 hours of storage to cover the evening peak, where people want to come home, they want to turn on the televisions, they want to cook, and they want their air conditioning running. But I do think batteries are going to be in the system in future, not batteries paired specifically with solar or wind plants, but batteries that simply take in power when there's plenty on the system, and that could come from baseload, that could come from wind, that could come from solar, and then release it at off-peak times. And I think that's really going to be a thing in future. And it will probably depend on the grid, what makes the most sense, but definitely I think what's going to be important in 20 years, I mean, power between 11 and 2 is going to be free, obviously, because the PV is running. So what's going to be important is not where it's from or even what the cost per megawatt hour is, it's when it's generated.
Okay, and Paddy, you have the last word before we say goodbye. So dispatchability, the value of dispatchability.
Yeah, no, therein is the answer. Dispatchability, well, the simple answer to the question is dispatchability increasing in value? Yes, because the inherent nature of renewable energy systems, which there is, that they are intermittent, and more coming into the system, we need to obviously balance it out. But I think, and I absolutely agree, I think you will find that finally we will end up with dispatchability being a mixture of batteries, CSP, and don't forget electronics. I think electronics also will play a part, how we are able to manage, bridge that tiny amount of fluctuations. But anyway, it's an exciting future. That's the important thing.
And I think most importantly, a renewable future, right? That in the end is of interest to everybody. We're moving away from fossil fuels, and I think that is a win for everybody. I think, yes, there's a transitional period where, you know, we're trying to find how it all fits in, but this is all good news. Just wanted to thank, first of all, obviously our speakers, Paddy and Stratos and Jenny and Frank for being here today. Frank, I'm not really calling him in because of the bandwidth issue, just in case. We also had a lot of questions and we had a lot of comments, so I want to thank you for those. We're going to try to the best of our ability, try and get those answered and hung up online so that you can read them. And thank you very much for all of you that have attended, for being there. And you know, let's just watch. As we are seeing, as around the good news is, this is renewables, and there's a role for CSP, there's a role for PV, and yes, very exciting. So thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.